Let's just run through the numbers very carefully here. Conservatives, 131 seats. Labour, an astonishing victory for Sir Keir Starmer, 410. The Liberal Democrats, huge increase for Sir Ed Davies' party, they're up to 61. Reform appear to have outperformed. They're on 13 seats. And the SNP in Scotland, another shock result if the exit poll is to be believed, SNP reduced to 10 seats in Scotland. Conservatives on 131 and Labour on 410. Brandon Lewis, as a former party chairman, just have your reaction, please.
Well, I mean, it's a dreadful result. I think a lot of colleagues have been preparing for what they thought might happen tonight. This is not as bad as some of the polls outlined, but it is as bad as I think anybody would have thought could happen.
I mean,
I think it's going to be a real shock to a lot of colleagues who would have still been hoping in the last few days they could make a difference, and they are no longer going to be MPs.
That Labour majority, though, 170, so that's just below the 1997 result for Labour.
Jeff, is that a disappointment?
On the contrary, it's an incredible achievement.
Well, it is, but there's been all this talk, hasn't there, about this is going to surpass everything.
Well, I'd be quite interested in seeing the actual percentages, because this is obviously a national poll that has then been converted into these numbers for seats. We won't really know whether those seat numbers are correct until we see the actual results coming in. But nevertheless, for a man who was threatened with the sack after the Hartlepool by-election, he's done incredibly well for the Labour Party, turned the Labour Party around and turned it into a tremendous result tonight. In order to win a simple majority, Labour had to get a bigger swing this time than we achieved in 1997, and he's gone way beyond that.
All right, you can see the exit poll now on screen showing Labour with that 170-seat majority on 410 seats. We've got the Conservatives, just to remind you, on 131. The Liberal Democrats appear to have eaten up a great deal of votes. They're on 61. And Reform had been predicted by some pollsters to win no seats. They are projected to win 13. The SNP, I mean, there's a story to tell in Scotland as well here, isn't there, this evening, because the SNP reduced to just 10 seats seems astonishing.
So the SNP have lost 38 seats from last time, I think.
Let's just put the majority into context. So the Labour majority of 2001 was 167. It's looking around there. It doesn't quite match Tony Blair's majority in 1997 of 179. Some of the predictions, Matt, I mean, seem to be a bit off. I mean, there was talk that the majority would be starting with a 2.
It's a very big majority. It's not what we became used to calling a super majority. Lowest number of Conservative seats since 1906, 131 seats for the Conservatives in 1906. A better than expected night for Nigel Farage and Reform, if those numbers hold, 13. That was actually above where most of the MRPs had them, at the upper range of the MRP expectations. SNP, dismal night, again suggests Labour are dominant in Scotland. That's a big problem for the Conservatives going forward. Good night for the Lib Dems.
All right, well, that's our reaction here. What about Essex? Let's cross to our GB News election party with Patrick and Michelle. Evening, you two. Party with Patrick and Michelle. Evening, you two.
Hello, yes, indeed. Live from Essex, our election watch party live. I can tell you now, I'll summarise the response to that exit poll. A loud groan when we heard the words Labour landslide. I can tell you what, when we got to the Reform, the 13 seats for Reform, I heard a massive cheer.